Well, my friends, I'm sure you heard by now, as it's actually official. After months of speculation, we finally have real confirmation that Apple is using Google Gemini to power Siri. And a lot of people are covering the story from the Apple side of things, talking about how Siri is going to be so great now, or on the other hand, they're talking about how Apple effectively gave up on Siri and now they have to pay Google to fix it. But on this channel, I'm way more interested in the Google side of the situation. If you sit back for a second and truly think about the scale, Google already controlled the default AI experience on Android devices. Over the past year, they've depreciated the Google Assistant, standardized a ton of big AI tools like Circle to Search or Magic Editor, and made Gemini the most proactive digital assistant right out of the box for every new Android user, which last time I checked, there's roughly 4 billion devices sitting around globally, making Gemini the AI platform with the largest install base on any AI product in the world. But now you do have to factor in the Apple side of the equation. Realistically, this Siri/Gemini collab isn't hitting every single iPhone on day one. We're looking at a gradual rollout that likely starts with the highest end AI capable devices, which rumor has it is around 500 million users right out the gate. That alone is massive, but if you look at the long-term ceiling of this partnership, the total addressable market for iOS sits around 2.3 billion active devices. And hey, you do the math yourself. If you did, that means there's a potential 7.3 billion devices that could eventually run on Gemini architecture. At that point, it literally does not matter if you buy a Samsung, Pixel, a OnePlus, or now an iPhone, the core intelligence will very likely be run by Google. And again, let that sink in, because in the long term, this is huge because this means Google is effectively able to define the baseline intelligence for AI systems across almost every available smartphone. If 99% of all smartphones in the world are using a Google-created model to get things done, then Google's raw reasoning capabilities become the global standard, even if these other companies apply their own safety tuning and their own personality on top of it. At this point, Google is certainly not just part of the AI race. They are literally the AI race themselves. And I mean, hey, it's a huge validation for Google that they have been doing the right thing. If you've been following tech, then you would know exactly the type of technology company that Apple is to work with. They're very picky, maybe even a bit arrogant due to their massive success, and they have such an incredibly high standard for quality. Typically, when it comes to new tech, they are well known to sit back and wait while others fail as they figure out the process, and then Apple releases their own polished iteration of this tech later on. But in this case, that strategy definitely failed them in a huge way. There's really no polite way to put it. Apple 100% screwed up the AI race. Personally, I think they under-researched, underperformed, under-implemented, and shareholders are probably at this point breathing down their necks to utilize AI more efficiently. And when you look at the competition, OpenAI, Perplexity, DeepSeek, Apple ended up going with Google, their biggest rival at the end of the day. The answer as to why is most likely about efficiency and cost, not really the server infrastructure itself. Apple is famously building its own private cloud compute to handle the processing privacy, so they don't need Google servers. What they actually do need is the model to run their ambitions on. Apple does have their own internal models that I'm sure they'll be working on trying to refine in the meantime, but training an AI model for the needs of a super smart assistant, especially for smartphones that's capable of so many tasks, is super expensive. It requires a ton of data and it takes years of trial and error. This late in the game, Apple probably realized it was much cheaper and faster to license a base model of sorts from Google, who's been spending the last decade perfecting it, and then they'll tune it towards the preferences of their user base. Google basically provided the most reliable, efficient, blank canvas for Apple to work on, allowing Apple to skip all the hard work that everyone else has done and get straight to launching the premium AI features. But what I think is the biggest, most impactful talking point that people are missing is how this change will affect the race between Google and OpenAI. So many people are glossing over the fact that an AI partnership with Apple was probably the last major holy grail in consumer tech. And honestly, after this deal is done, OpenAI has an incredibly long road ahead. It is important to be clear with you guys that by all accounts, it doesn't appear Google will be getting access to any user data from this deal. The processing is happening on Apple's processors and Apple's own private cloud servers. The only thing that Google is actually doing themselves, from what it seems like, is licensing the technology, but my argument stems from the fact that Google Google is now playing more of a dealer role in this situation. Google provides the model, and Apple runs it inside their own infrastructure, and this is huge because by licensing Gemini to Apple, Google has effectively denied OpenAI access to one of the largest premium consumer bases in the world. Imagine you're Sam Altman for just a second, spending billions on chips, servers, research and development, overpaying for high quality talent, and scared that they're going to run off to a bigger company like Meta, Apple, or Google. Gunning for a big partnership like this would have been a huge payoff. No doubt, it's a huge marketing opportunity as you get your AI model in the hands of the normal, everyday user, not just the tech enthusiasts. But now that Google took that one spot, one of the best potential methods for distribution is effectively cut off from OpenAI. From here on out, if OpenAI wants new users, they have to find new partnerships. They have to find a new method for marketing and somehow convince new users to download a completely separate app. Meanwhile, Google, on the other hand, doesn't really have to do anything. As I said in my last OpenAI versus Google video, they just exist as the default AI model for a significant portion of the smartphone population. And even if we start looking farther ahead, not just 2026, but 2027 and onward on where this technology is going, Google's dominance isn't just going to stop at smartphones. The next big frontier for consumer tech is certainly going to be smart glasses. It's the next super hyped product that everyone's trying to get ahead of, and this deal with Apple does quietly position Google to win that race as well. For the concept of smart glasses to actually work well, they need an incredibly powerful, multimodal AI that can instantly see and understand the world around you through cameras, and they need to have a competent agentic AI model to actually do tasks on your behalf, like navigation or responding to a text. Not to mention, it needs to be fast, super cheap, or else whatever product that happens to come from it will have terrible battery and likely cost a fortune on the consumer's end, and it might even need a subscription to pay for all of those AI inquiries. This is another area where Google's infrastructure wins again, because Gemini 3 Flash, as it stands today, right now, is already built exactly for this type of low latency, high efficiency prompt. They're actively testing this tech right now with Gemini Live with Video, Project Mariner as an agentic browser, Pixel phones adding all of these new agentic features, and Android XR, all of which can already interact with so many of the Google services out there. Meanwhile, OpenAI, the last time we checked, is still working on hardware prototypes with Johnny Ive, but without that deep operating system level integration, I just don't know how well their devices can compete. I just clearly see a future where Gemini powers all of these smart glasses from Google, Apple, Samsung, and more long before OpenAI can even get close to releasing a comparable product. But that, my friends, is just my quick thoughts from a more googly perspective on this whole Gemini versus Siri situation. And I have to admit, I do feel a little vindicated by this news. If you remember that Gemini versus OpenAI video that I made a while back, I argued that Google's slow, boring, and steady improvements over AI models would eventually suffocate the competition, along with their massive reach, mind you. A lot of people were a little bit upset by this video. They thought I was maybe calling it too soon, but this is all of the proof that I need personally. When Apple themselves looks at the AI models on the market and they choose Google, their biggest rival, as the only one capable of handling their needs, I think it gives me all the validation that I'm looking for. I think this piece of news is the final confirmation that the tides have officially turned for the better or for worse, depending on which side you're on, but that part we'll just have to wait and see. Until next time, my friends, this has been Jordan Floyd from 9 to 5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I will certainly see you in the next one.